Has the market changed its mind about what the Fed may do next?
We have got to get inflation behind us. I wish there were a painless way to do that. There isn't.
Think of that number, and maybe more importantly, what do you think the Fed's going to do, and therefore what your equity is going to do?
I've been saying over and over again to my colleagues here that he wants your portfolio down so that you won't be able to spend as much.
Hello, welcome, happy Halloween, and I'm Christopher Crystal with Financial Stockholm. These are our views about the market. It's Monday, the 31st of October, 2022. And over the weekend, we had a little bit of Swedish press, but not much focus on the economy. Mostly there was news about what's happened in Korea, which is awful, but very little news about developing what's here in Sweden. And so we did have some political scandal. There is a member of the Swedish Democrat Party who will have to go because her racist texts and praising of Hitler have been revealed. So she will leave, but fear not. According to the documents from the Riksdag, the policy of her being in place for 10 years guarantees she'll continue to get paid. So this brings us to the global problem of candidates and political candidates, where you have very poor choices and people are being forced to choose. You saw in Brazil, you had Bolsonaro versus Lula. Lula won. So you have a former convicted criminal, and I'm not sure about the charges that were brought against him, if it was from Bolsonaro or something else, but it was about corruption. And so you have a lot of corruption in Brazil in general. And you have two candidates that are running against each other and barely beat each other. The problem is for Sweden is that our coalition government came in on power with the promise of fixing our Swedish society and fixing issues, excuse me, within the Swedish society that have been plaguing it. So, for instance, violence and gang violence. We had a car explosion in Sweden, in Helsingborg, which is one of our larger cities, and there's very little press about it. Nobody I know talked about it at all this weekend. It was only when I informed them. So there were more articles about Victoria Silvstedt's houses and how many she owns, as opposed to the society in Sweden, which both sides discussed in the election campaign. So for both sides, the issue of the violence is an issue, a key issue. We saw more about foreign news discussing the U.S. politics than we saw about our own here in Sweden. So our focus will be on the energy. Energy is going to be the continued theme. We're getting a rebate here in Sweden for different regions. The southern regions, which pay higher in tax, higher in energy costs, are going to be getting a rebate, while the northern regions will not. And the exact amount has not yet been worked out. There's been an amount floated, but that's what's happening. And on top of that, if you look at what's going on in energy and we look at Europe, the significant news that now people are focusing on, or can focus on, is in England, the Mini Cooper production of electric vehicles will shift to China. And why I mention that is because we have companies here in Sweden that are doing similar technologies for car batteries in the north, one called Northvolt, which has been a rising star. It's not yet public, but it recently did a convertible offering for where it raised 1.1 billion, and that's previous raise was, I think, over 8 billion. And they're focused on green technology. They have a nice factory in the northern part of Sweden, which is producing electric batteries for Volvo cars, which is Chinese these days. And so I think there will be a question going forward: how do we see energy being produced in Sweden, and how do we attract business to Sweden? And in Europe in general, BASF, they had that 800 million in cost increase because of unpredictable electricity prices. You now see Cooper Mini EV moving to China because of the electricity price issue. If you can't build a business with a reliable energy source, where do you want to build? Well, China and India are both building power plants, both in coal and in nuclear. And yes, they are building wind power and they are building solar, but the main source of power that they're looking at is reliable. And so Europe isn't an issue with natural gas. Remember, the United States provides about 44% of the liquid natural gas to Europe. Norway is providing about 23 to 25%. And then you have to make the rest up with the Middle East, because Russian gas isn't supposed to be allowed anymore, although Italy is still receiving. So we're in the midst of a battle for our energy and energy supply, and how we're going to be able to attract business, and if any businesses will be leaving Sweden. So the focus will likely continue to be about the electricity. In Sweden this weekend, it was released today by our Swedish Power Network. We have an energy ministry, and we have a Swedish power ministry as well. They released a report discussing the flexibility of Swedish electrical systems. And they came up with the conclusion that it's not easily flexible. So what they're offering is a potential on different pricing models to put through. So nobody's really coming out with a solution about, okay, we should be moving forward on the nuclear. You even had Vattenfall CEO saying nuclear is not going to be something till 2030, maybe windmills, which is something the Tito-avtalet for the current coalition was not focused on. It was more focused on the nuclear. There's going to be a big debate, and we'll see what it comes up with. We do have 2 liquid natural gas ports in Sweden, possibly 3, but actually 3, but one in focus is down in Gothenburg, and that's shipping natural gas over to Denmark afterwards. So that will be a continued focus for Sweden, because energy poor companies or countries have generally had slower producing GDP. So if Europe wants to get back in the game on GDP growth, they have to come up with a solution for the energy, and so does Sweden. We used to be independent, and now we're reliant. Moving on into healthcare, we have that as a big part of the Tito-avtalet, and also being cracked down on in Stockholm area, where these companies have the most exposure, is the online doctor networks. So there's going to be a rearrangement or a look at how they're able to make their money based on the list, because we have this national healthcare system, and these other institutions that have popped up in the private sector have been because of the lack of ability to really use the Swedish healthcare system if you're not in dire need. So if you're somebody who's in an accident, yes, you do go to the hospital. But if you're somebody about to give birth, then there's been issues. If you're somebody who needs to have a minor operation, there have been issues and wait times. So we're moving forward, but not much really discussed in the Swedish press this weekend. If you do want to read further on some of the topics, they're all included in the notes. And with that, we'll wish you a great rest of the day and happy investing. Thank you very much.